This video demonstrates how Dell Crowbar integrates with the Cloudera Manager API to simplify the development of Cloudera Hadoop clusters. Crowbar is a tool developed at Dell to automate the deployment of large-scale infrastructure like cloud computing and big data analytics. Crowbar is a DevOps-inspired lifecycle management system that deploys and configures nodes from a bare metal state to a fully provisioned system. Crowbar deploys systems in layers, from physical configuration of hardware including RAID and BIOS settings, to operating systems, networking, and operating system services like DNS, logging, and time synchronization. After the operating system is deployed, Crowbar can then deploy the Hadoop infrastructure like CDH, as well as HBase, Impala, Search, and Navigator. Crowbar also deploys core infrastructure monitoring like Nagios and Ganglia, as well as other big data components. Crowbar uses a dedicated administration server to manage the infrastructure. Initially, a node is discovered through a network PXE boot, and Crowbar probes the server to determine its hardware configuration. When a node is allocated by an administrator, Crowbar then installs and configures the operating system and networking layers. Then it deploys application-level infrastructure based on the node's intended role in the cluster. Throughout the process, Crowbar uses an internal state machine and configuration database to track the functions and roles deployed on each node. When deploying Cloudera Hadoop, Crowbar has predefined roles for the various nodes in the cluster, including name nodes, edge nodes, HA nodes, management nodes, and data nodes. Crowbar uses this role information to correctly configure each node for its intended purpose. However, in previous releases of the Dell Cloudera solution, this information was not passed to Cloudera Manager, requiring an administrator setting up a cluster to specify the roles a second time to Cloudera Manager, usually in the install wizard. In the latest release of the Dell Crowbar solution, including Cloudera Hadoop, we have tightened the integration between Cloudera Manager and Crowbar. After the roles are assigned in Crowbar, we then connect to Cloudera Manager via the Cloudera Manager API and pass the node information directly into Cloudera Manager. We also use the API to create an initial Hadoop cluster fully configured based on the Crowbar role information, eliminating the most complex and error-prone part of the deployment process. This is the main Crowbar screen showing the node dashboard, and this is where I initiate most Crowbar operations. In this case, I have a series of machines here blinking yellow on the dashboard. These have already been discovered by Crowbar. I'm going to go through the initial allocation process for these nodes to mainly assign them names and also to set up the RAID and BIOS configurations. And I do that through the bulk edit screen. It's the quickest way to do it in Crowbar. So over here you'll see the machines have been assigned the initial name and an IP address. These are based on MAC addresses. I'm going to go through here and assign to them their names in the Hadoop cluster and also the BIOS and RAID settings. So my first machine here is going to be my Hadoop Edge node. So I'm going to go off and fill in HD Edge for a name. For BIOS settings, I'm going to go into the drop-down and choose Hadoop Infrastructure. I have two choices, Hadoop and Hadoop Infrastructure. This is an infrastructure node, and for my RAID settings, I want a single RAID 10 partition on this node for reliability. I'm then going to go through the remaining nodes. My Hadoop Master Name node. My secondary name node, I'm also setting up an HA node, also infrastructure with RAID 10. This will act as a quorum node when I enable quorum-based HA, and then I have 3 nodes remaining that I'm going to make data nodes. In the case of the data nodes, I'm going to configure those 3 nodes using the Hadoop BIOS setting, and for the RAID settings I'm going to choose JBOD because I don't want a RAID partition, I just want individual partitions, 1 per disk. I don't need to change the group settings. This will help me group them together when I have a larger cluster, typically by rack or by network switch. I also have an option for a longer description. In this case, I've now filled in all the blanks. I've given them a quick check. They look good. I'm going to go off and save this screen, and this will begin the allocation process of provisioning the operating system on the nodes. It is not applying Hadoop specific roles at this point. I've just assigned the names and chosen the basic disk and BIOS settings, but I haven't specialized anything anymore. Once I save this, the actual process will take maybe 15 minutes. Depends on how many nodes are in the cluster, but it'll be in the neighborhood of 15 or 20 minutes. If I go back to the node dashboard, I can see this allocation process beginning here in a few moments. These guys will go from yellow where they were discovered to either pending or in a deploying state. This is the Crowbar screen after the allocation finished, and we can see that all the nodes are now labeled green, which tells me that they've been fully allocated. I can also drill into an individual node, like for example the edge node, to see what's running on that node. And for the single node entry, I can see the various capabilities that have been installed here, including the BIOS and RAID settings and some of the lower level infrastructure like Nagios, things like NTP. My next step here would be to go ahead, and I'm then going to take these nodes and use the Cloudera Manager bar clamp to put the Cloudera specific roles on them. To deploy Cloudera, I go to the bar clamps menu and I pick Apache Hadoop, and then I will see the Cloudera Manager bar clamp entry here. I'll click on this, create a new proposal. I'm just going to call it proposal. And then when I get into the bar clamp proposal screen, this will allow me to tweak a bunch of settings as I go ahead and deploy out Cloudera. In my case, there's not much I want to change here. I have the option to pick a file system type. I'm going to go with ext4. We also support ext3. I have some base HDFS and MapReduce settings I could change here. The important parts for us are, number 1, under Cloudera Manager API, instead of picking manual, I'm going to pick auto, which is the new setting. Then I'm going to scroll down to the node deployment section of this proposal, and I'm going to go first. I'm going to remove these nodes. Crowbar will try and pick some allocations, but they're usually not what I want, apart from the admin node. So over here I have a role called CB admin node, which is the Crowbar admin node. That is HD admin. I'm then going to take the node here on the left, in my case the edge node. That's where I'm going to put the Cloudera Manager. For the name node, I'm going to pick HD master. I'm also going to apply that role to HD secondary, which is also my name node. It would either be the secondary name node or one of the quorum name nodes. For data nodes, I'm going to pick HD data 1, HD data 2, and HD data 3. My edge node, which is really a client node for the cluster, is going to be the node I called HD edge. And then we support 2 options for HA. In my case, I would want to use Quorum, which is the more recent version. So I will take the node I called HA, and I'm going to apply the HA journal node to him. Once I'm done with these settings, I apply. This will now take about, again, another 10 or 15 minutes to go push out the remaining Cloudera software, primarily the Cloudera Manager and the Cloudera agent. It will start Cloudera Manager, and then we will use the API. Because we selected auto, we'll use the Cloudera Manager API to build out the initial cluster and assign HDFS to the data nodes and the name nodes to HD master, HD secondary, and so on. At this point, my proposal has successfully completed, so I'm going to scroll to the top of the screen here, and I'm going to go back to the node dashboard. From the node dashboard, I'll take a look at my edge node, And when I take a look at the Edge node, I can see the various bar clamps and roles that have been applied here, including the Cloudera Manager services. There's a shortcut link here that'll take me to Cloudera Manager, and I'm going to use that to take a look at my cluster. When I log into Cloudera Manager, I can see that the cluster is up and running. I have the Cloudera Manager services set up, and I have an HDFS and a MapReduce service set up. So I can drill in here, take a look at the individual services, and based on the role information that was specified in Crowbar, all of the cluster nodes are set up, and I can see the full status on the various nodes. So I'm up and ready to run with Hadoop.